When Olivia and Marcus bought the centuries-old mansion, they expected creaking floors and ghost stories, not a mystery that would rewrite history. During a renovation, Marcus noticed something odd, a section of the basement wall that echoed differently when tapped. Behind it, they found a sealed iron door covered in soot, its handle cold as ice. Inside was no crypt, but a workshop, untouched for over 100 years. Dust-covered inventions, blueprints, and a journal signed Elias Turner, 1891. But as they began to read, the lights flickered, and a faint hum filled the air, as if one of the machines was waking up. What they uncovered next would expose the mansion's darkest secret. The afternoon sun was melting into a soft orange glow as Olivia and Marcus Whitmore drove through the quiet countryside of Charleston, South Carolina. The road was lined with sprawling oaks, their moss-draped branches whispering in the warm, humid wind. Ahead, rising beyond a line of hedges, stood the Bellwood Mansion, a colossal relic of the 1800s that had been abandoned for decades. Its pale columns, cracked by time, still carried an air of pride and tragedy. To Olivia, a historian with a love for forgotten architecture, it was breathtaking. To Marcus, a structural engineer, it was a challenge wrapped in mystery. They parked in front of the gates, where a faded "Sold" sign leaned against the rusted fence. The house looked like it hadn't heard laughter in centuries. Birds scattered from the broken windows as the couple stepped out. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus asked, adjusting his glasses as he stared at the sprawling property. "Absolutely," Olivia replied with quiet conviction. "Every home has a story, and this one's been waiting to tell it." Inside, the air was heavy with dust and memories. The grand staircase curved upward like a frozen wave, its mahogany railing coated in grime. Faded portraits lined the hallway, stern men in uniforms, women with distant eyes, and one particular painting of a young black man holding what looked like a violin bow. Olivia paused. "That's odd," she whispered. "Why would there be a portrait of a black man in a plantation mansion from this era?" Marcus frowned. "Maybe a servant who worked here?" "No," Olivia said, stepping closer. "He's dressed too well. And look at the background. That's not a servant's quarters. That's the workshop behind him." They exchanged glances but moved on. The rest of the house was a maze of forgotten beauty. Stained glass, cracked marble floors, a chandelier hanging by a single chain. Yet despite its decay, there was something magnetic about it. When the realtor had given them the keys, she'd hesitated before saying, "Most people who buy this place never stay long." Marcus had laughed then, brushing it off as small-town superstition, but now, as he felt a chill sweep through the hall, he wasn't so sure. That night, the mansion groaned with the sound of settling wood and whispering wind. Olivia sat on the dusty floor of the library, flipping through a stack of old documents she'd found inside a drawer. Property deeds, letters, even an old map of the estate. "Marcus, come look at this," she called. He knelt beside her, flashlight in hand. "What is it?" "It's the original floor plan," Olivia said. "But look here." She pointed to a small rectangular section marked "Workshop, lower basement." Marcus squinted. "Lower basement? There's no door for that on the main plan." "That's exactly the point," Olivia said. "It's missing from the renovation blueprints too." They exchanged another look, that same unspoken thrill of discovery. The next morning, Marcus brought his tools down to the basement. The stairs creaked beneath his weight, and the air grew cooler as he descended. The basement was mostly empty, just old crates, a broken furnace, and damp walls covered in ivy roots. But then he noticed something. A section of the far wall looked different. The bricks were slightly newer, the mortar uneven, as if someone had patched it in a hurry. He knocked once, solid. "Knocked again, hollow! Olivia!" he shouted. She rushed down, flashlight trembling in her hand. "What did you find?" Marcus pointed to the wall. "Someone sealed something in here." Without a word, he grabbed a hammer and began to chip away. The sound of breaking brick echoed through the empty basement. After several minutes, a small hole revealed iron, the edge of a large, rusted door. They cleared the rest, exposing an arched frame with intricate carvings along its border, almost like symbols or initials etched into the metal. At the center was a single keyhole. "No handle," Olivia murmured. "It's locked from the outside." Marcus pressed his hand against the door. It was cold, unnaturally cold, as if the metal itself resisted touch. "Should we open it?" Marcus asked. Olivia hesitated, then nodded. "If this house is hiding something, we're meant to find it." They searched every drawer and shelf for a key but found nothing. Eventually, Marcus pried the lock open using a crowbar. The door groaned, a deep metallic cry that seemed to vibrate through the floor. When it finally swung open, a gust of cold air rushed out, smelling faintly of oil, dust, and something metallic, like burnt copper. They stepped inside. It wasn't a storage room. It was a workshop, frozen in time. Wooden tables covered in tools, glass jars with labeled powders, blueprints pinned to the walls. A tall brass contraption stood in the corner, shaped like a combination of a telescope and a phonograph. On another table lay stacks of notebooks bound in leather. And on the wall, above the workbench, hung a framed newspaper clipping. "Elias Turner, Negro inventor's work stuns the scientific community. Claims rejected due to ownership dispute." Olivia's breath caught. "He wasn't a servant," she whispered. "He was an inventor." Marcus stepped closer to the contraption, brushing dust off the brass. "Looks like he was building something electrical, maybe even revolutionary for the time." Olivia opened one of the journals. The handwriting was elegant, full of diagrams and notes. The last entry sent chills down her spine. They said they would take everything, my designs, my name, my future. But I have hidden the truth where only the light can find it. When the world is ready, they'll hear my voice again. The page ended there. That night, Olivia couldn't sleep. The words echoed in her head. They'll hear my voice again. She returned to the basement alone, flashlight trembling in her hand. The air was colder than before. She moved toward the workbench, her light flickering over the strange device. As she touched one of the switches, it hummed softly, impossibly. The machine, after all these years, was still alive. Olivia stumbled back, her flashlight rolling across the floor. The hum grew louder, and for a brief moment, she thought she saw something reflected in the brass, a man's outline, wearing round glasses, hands poised as if still working. Then the sound faded. Everything fell silent again. The next morning, Marcus found her sitting on the floor beside the machine, eyes wide but calm. "Live, what happened?" She looked up at him. "He's trying to tell us something." Marcus frowned. "Who?" "Elias Turner," she said softly. "The man who built this." The next morning dawned gray and heavy, the kind of day that carried silence like a warning. Olivia sat at the old wooden dining table, Elias Turner's journals spread before her like relics from another life. Marcus poured coffee but said little. Neither of them had spoken much since she'd returned from the basement last night, shaken, pale and trembling with something she couldn't quite name. Now, sunlight streamed through cracked windows, falling across the pages of Elias's notes. Each one was filled with sketches, circuits, cogs, and handwritten codes that didn't match any known pattern. But in the margins there were messages, phrases that felt almost poetic. Every invention is a heartbeat. What they bury in silence, light will one day reveal. Olivia traced the words with her fingers. "He was a genius," she whispered. "But he wasn't just inventing, I think he was leaving something behind." Marcus sipped his coffee, skeptical but curious. "You think he hid something?" "I think he encoded something," she said. "These aren't just notes. Look." She flipped to a sketch of a strange mechanical device labeled resonance engine. "He built this for a reason." Marcus leaned in. "That's the same machine we found." Olivia nodded. "Yes, and I think it can still work." They returned to the basement together, the air still cold, the heavy scent of rust and time pressing around them. The resonance engine stood silent, covered in dust but intact, a tower of brass coils, glass tubes, and copper wires, all feeding into a small polished disc at its center. Marcus crouched to examine the wiring. "This is impossible," he murmured. "Some of these parts shouldn't even exist for that time period." Olivia held the journal open to a page describing the machine's purpose. to preserve memory through vibration, to let sound outlive its speaker. She looked at Marcus, her voice barely a whisper. He was trying to record something, like an early phonograph? Maybe more, she said. Something beyond that. He talks about resonance of the soul. Maybe he was trying to preserve himself? Marcus laughed nervously, though his voice wavered. You mean like a ghost in the machine? Olivia didn't answer. They decided to test it. Marcus carefully reconnected a few loose wires and replaced a cracked fuse with one from his toolbox. Olivia stood ready, her heart thudding. When Marcus flipped the switch, the machine began to hum. Soft at first, then stronger. A deep, vibrating sound that filled the air like the echo of a distant voice. The brass panels glowed faintly, the glass tubes pulsing with light. Then, from the polished disc, came a faint whisper. At first it was nothing but static, but slowly syllables began to form, distorted but human. If you are hearing this, then they did what I feared, Olivia gasped. Marcus, do you hear that? The voice grew clearer, though still fragmented by age and distortion. My work, stolen, my name erased, but the truth will not die with me. Then, a long silence. The machine powered down with a low sigh. Marcus stepped back, speechless. That was a recording, he said. From the 1800s, Olivia's eyes were wet with tears. He knew. He knew they were going to take everything. They listened again, trying to capture each word. As the message replayed, Marcus noticed something in the background, a faint rhythmic tapping beneath the voice like Morse code. He grabbed a notepad and started writing the pattern. It's intentional. He left a code behind the message. What does it say? Olivia asked. Marcus translated slowly, one symbol at a time. It says, North Wall, hidden beneath light. The next morning they searched the workshop's north wall. Nothing looked unusual, just brick and dust. But when Olivia turned on her flashlight, the beam hit something strange. A faint outline appeared under the plaster. A rectangle, maybe 2 feet across. Marcus grabbed a chisel. You ready? Do it! The wall cracked open after several minutes of scraping. Behind it they found a small metal box, perfectly preserved. Inside lay folded papers, blueprints, official patents, and one sealed envelope. Olivia's hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a letter, dated May 4th, 1889. To whoever finds this, I am Elias Turner. They took my ideas, called them their own, and buried me in silence. The Bellwood name will stand on my work, but my legacy will not end in these walls. One day someone will listen. When the light finds this place again, so will the truth, Marcus whispered. He was betrayed by the family who owned this house. Olivia nodded, tears welling. He was enslaved, freed, and then robbed of everything he created. And they locked him, and his work, away. As they stood in the cold workshop, a soft sound filled the air. The machine, the resonance engine, had powered itself on again. The disc began to spin, slowly, then faster. The hum deepened, and the same voice returned, clearer this time. But this time it wasn't just words. It was music. A violin's mournful melody filled the basement, haunting and beautiful. It carried pain, brilliance, and a kind of peace that made Olivia's chest ache. She whispered, He's still here. Marcus swallowed hard, watching as the sound reverberated through the room. He wanted someone to hear his final song. The light from the machine grew stronger, reflecting against the brass walls until the whole room shimmered, and for a single, fleeting moment, they saw him, Elias Turner, standing at his workbench, eyes calm, hands resting on his creation. He looked at them, nodded once, and then faded into the golden light. The machine shut down with a final, gentle sigh when they brought the papers upstairs. Olivia spent hours cross-referencing them with historical records. It turned out that many inventions credited to a William Bellwood, a generator prototype, an early battery design, matched Elias Turner's blueprints exactly. He had changed the world. But no one had ever known, until now. Olivia's hands trembled as she packed the documents into archival folders. We're going to publish everything, she said. His name will be remembered. Marcus nodded. And his voice won't be silent anymore. That night, as they left the mansion for the last time, Olivia paused at the door and looked back. The air inside was still and quiet. But as the light from her flashlight flickered across the floor, she could swear she saw the reflection of the machine's brass disc, glowing faintly. Like a heartbeat still alive, the story of Elias Turner's lost inventions should have changed history overnight. But the truth, as Olivia soon discovered, rarely finds its way into the world so easily. 3 weeks after their discovery, she and Marcus sat across from a panel of local historians, journalists, and representatives from the Bellwood Foundation, the very organization that had once belonged to the family who enslaved and silenced Elias Turner. The conference room was cold, too polished, too modern. Olivia laid the yellowed blueprints across the glass table with trembling hands. These documents prove Elias Turner created the early prototype for the Bellwood resonance generator, not William Bellwood, she began. The handwriting, the signatures, even the date align with everything we found in the hidden basement beneath the old plantation home. An older man at the head of the table adjusted his glasses. Mrs. Carter, he said smoothly, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but surely you understand how dangerous it is to rewrite history based on unverified relics? Olivia stiffened. Unverified? We have the machine, the recordings. His voice, but the man only smiled politely. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. Beside her, Marcus clenched his jaw. You'd rather protect a family name than admit the truth. The man's eyes hardened. We protect facts, not fantasies. And just like that, the meeting was over. That night, Olivia sat alone in their small rented apartment, Elias Turner's letter resting in her lap. She read his words again and again, feeling the same ache she'd felt the day she found them. They took my ideas, called them their own, and buried me in silence. She whispered into the quiet. Not anymore. When Marcus returned from work, she was already at the computer. We're not waiting for their permission, she said. We're going to show the world ourselves, he frowned. How? Document everything. The blueprints, the recordings, the room, even the machine. We'll post it online. Once it's public, they can't hide it. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. If we do this, there's no going back. Olivia met his gaze. That's the point. Over the next few days, they filmed everything. The sealed door, the discovery of the machine, the moment Elias Turner's voice played through the static. Olivia narrated carefully, her voice trembling with emotion, but filled with purpose. She titled the video, The Hidden Room Beneath the Mansion, The True Legacy of Elias Turner. They uploaded it just past midnight. By morning, it had over 200,000 views. People from around the world began sharing the story. Historians, engineers, musicians. Everyone wanted to know more about the mysterious black inventor whose brilliance had been erased by history. But with the attention came shadows. Emails started arriving. Some from well-wishers, but others filled with anger. Stop spreading lies. The Bellwoods built this country, not some slave. Take that video down before someone takes it down for you. Marcus grew uneasy. We need to be careful, Liv. They don't want this story out. But Olivia refused to stop. Elias Turner's been silent for over 100 years. I won't silence him again. A week later, they returned to the mansion. Something inside Olivia told her she needed to see the workshop again. Not as explorers, but as witnesses. The house felt different now. The moment they stepped through the door, the air felt charged, almost humming with unseen energy. As they descended into the basement, the sound grew stronger, a deep, low resonance that made the walls tremble. Marcus froze halfway down the stairs. Do you hear that? Olivia nodded slowly. It's the machine. But they hadn't touched it since the day they found it. When they reached the bottom, the resonance engine was glowing again, faintly, but enough to light the entire room in gold. The disc spun slowly, emitting soft pulses of light with every rotation. And this time, the air wasn't filled with static or music. It was whispers, soft, overlapping voices. Dozens of them. Marcus stepped closer. It's multiple recordings, Olivia shivered. No, it's memories. The voices grew louder, more distinct. Some cried, some sang, some whispered names. A chorus of pain, brilliance, and hope, all woven into sound. Then a single voice broke through the noise. Elias Turner's, clear as day. They tried to take my name, but they cannot take what lives in the walls. Olivia's heart pounded. He's speaking to us. Marcus frowned, staring at the machine. No, Liv, I think he's speaking to them. He pointed to the shadows at the far end of the room, and for a split second, they both saw them. Figures. Dozens of them. Silhouettes of men and women dressed in 19th century clothing, standing silently in the dark. Their faces shimmered faintly, made of light and memory. Olivia stepped back, tears streaming down her face. The others. The ones who were forgotten. Elias's voice echoed once more. We built more than they destroyed. We are the foundation. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the light faded. The figures vanished. The machine went silent. They left the mansion shaken, unable to speak for a long time. When they finally reached their car, Olivia whispered, Marcus, that wasn't just a recording. That was something alive. He stared at the house in the rearview mirror. Maybe Elias's resonance engine really did what he claimed. Maybe it captured more than sound, Olivia nodded slowly. Maybe it captured souls. That night, Olivia received a call from an unknown number. When she answered, a cold voice greeted her. You've caused quite a stir, Mrs. Carter, she froze. Who is this? You don't need to know. What you need to know is that those documents belong to the Bellwood estate. Return them, and this situation will disappear. Olivia's throat tightened. You buried him once. I won't let you do it again, the voice sighed. Then you'll regret it. The line went dead. Within 24 hours, the video vanished from every major platform. Their channel was suspended. News outlets that had covered the story suddenly withdrew their articles, claiming lack of verification. Marcus slammed his laptop shut. They're erasing it again. Olivia's voice broke. No, not again. She stood, grabbed her coat, and headed for the door. Marcus caught her wrist. Where are you going? To the mansion, she said. If they want to hide the truth, I'll show the world what's really buried there. The drive through the storm was long and silent. Rain battered the windshield as lightning lit the dark fields around them. When they reached the house, the front door was already open. Someone had been there. They rushed to the basement and froze. The resonance engine was gone. The walls were bare. The shelves empty. The journals scattered on the floor like they'd been torn apart. Marcus muttered, They took everything. But Olivia knelt on the floor, running her fingers over the cold cement. Not everything. Her hand brushed against something small, a metallic plate embedded in the floor, engraved with Elias's initials, E.T. When she lifted it, a faint light glowed beneath. It was a smaller device, a handheld piece of the resonance engine. Engraved on its side were the words, Truth finds its own frequency. Olivia whispered. He left a backup. Marcus connected the small device to his laptop. Instantly, the screen flickered and filled with static. Then an image appeared. It was Elias Turner himself. His face projected in flickering sepia light, his voice steady and solemn. If you are seeing this, then they tried again. They always will. But remember this, memory cannot be owned. It lives wherever courage breathes. Do not fear them. Record what they erase. Speak what they silence. Olivia covered her mouth, sobbing. Marcus whispered, He made this for us. The recording ended with one final phrase. To those who listen, make the walls sing again. As the rain poured outside, Olivia held the device close. We'll rebuild the machine, she said, piece by piece. And this time the world will hear it. Marcus nodded, his voice quiet but resolute. Then let's make the world listen. And as lightning flashed across the sky, the mansion behind them pulsed faintly with gold light, as though the echoes of Elias Turner's brilliance still hummed through every beam, every wall, every buried memory waiting to be freed. The resonance engine had stopped being just a machine. It had become a living heartbeat beneath the earth. Its glow filled every corner of the basement, the air trembling with unseen power. Dust lifted from forgotten shelves as the hum deepened into something more, something alive. Olivia and Marcus stood shoulder to shoulder, eyes wide as the light bled into color, painting the room gold and blue. "Marcus," Olivia whispered. "It's responding to us." He swallowed hard. Or to him. The light shifted. Lines formed in the air, swirling, condensing until the faint image of a man began to appear. Tall, proud, and dressed in the faded garb of another century. His hands were calloused, his eyes steady. Elias Turner, the man whose name had been buried under decades of theft and silence. His figure shimmered like smoke, as if made of music and memory. Then his voice filled the room, low and aching, carried by the hum of the machine. "If you are hearing this, it means time has done what I could not. It has remembered me." Olivia gasped, tears already welling. "It's him. Marcus, it's really him." Elias looked around as if speaking to ghosts. "They took my machine, my blueprints, my words. They told the world a colored man could not invent light. But they forgot one thing. Light remembers who made it." His voice echoed, vibrating through their bones. The walls shimmered, and suddenly, the workshop began to change. The years peeled away like old wallpaper. The air warmed, filled with the smell of coal and engine oil. They were no longer in the ruins of an old basement. They were standing inside Elias Turner's workshop, alive, buzzing, before it was destroyed. Marcus reached out and touched a bench that wasn't really there. It felt warm. "What are we seeing?" He breathed. "His memory," Olivia murmured. "This machine, it's more than sound. It's conscious recollection." In the vision, Elias bent over the machine. He was younger, sweat running down his brow, focused on tightening a wire. Behind him, two men in polished suits entered, white men, their posture arrogant, the kind that spoke of money and ownership. "Mr. Turner," one said smoothly, "you've done remarkable work here. The company is most impressed." Elias straightened, pride glimmering in his eyes. "Then you'll understand why I want to submit the patent under my own name." A silence followed. Then came a small laugh, sharp and cruel. "Let's be realistic, Elias. You know the law. It wouldn't be accepted." "You mean because of the color of my skin?" Elias said quietly. "Don't make this about race," the man snapped. "You'll still be compensated. A generous sum, I assure you." Elias looked at the machine, the culmination of his life's work. His dream was to use light vibrations to capture sound, to store human memory and music. He had called it the resonance engine. "You'll put your names on my work," he said bitterly. "You'll erase me." "We'll immortalize you in spirit," the other man said with a smirk. "Now, sign the papers." When Elias refused, the taller man stepped closer. His tone turned venomous. "Listen, boy. You built this under our roof with our money. You'll either hand it over peacefully, or we'll make sure no one remembers you existed." The scene began to tremble. Flames sparked in the edges of the room, the smell of smoke, of burning wood. Marcus gasped. "Oh my God, they burned it," Olivia whispered. "They burned him out." Elias's memory self shouted over the crackling fire, his voice breaking through time itself. "You can burn the blueprints, but you can't burn the truth." The light shattered, and Olivia and Marcus were thrown backward into the present. They gasped, landing hard on the cold stone floor of the modern basement. The projection of Elias flickered violently, half fading, half reforming. His voice was no longer a whisper. It thundered. "They buried my name, but I buried my legacy deeper." The resonance engine's golden glow turned red, pulsing faster, like a heart racing toward its final beat. The machine started shaking. Wires sparked. "Olivia, it's overloading," Marcus shouted, grabbing her arm. But Olivia was staring at Elias. "He's trying to finish it. Marcus, he built this to tell his story, to make sure no one could silence him again." "You must remember," Elias's voice cried, cutting through the roar. "Promise me. You will make them remember." "I promise," Olivia yelled back, tears streaking her face. "I promise we will tell the world." Then the machine exploded in light. A sound, pure and powerful, rang out, not noise but music. A symphony of violins, horns, drums, hundreds of instruments playing in perfect harmony. But beneath it all, woven like thread through the melody, was Elias's voice. "We are more than what they took from us." The mansion shook. Shelves toppled, glass shattered. The storm outside howled louder. The electricity surged and burst through the walls. And then, silence. The light faded. Smoke curled in the corners. The hum of the machine was gone. Marcus coughed, blinking through the haze. "Liv, are you okay?" She nodded slowly, eyes still wet. The resonance engine lay silent, its core cracked open like a broken heart. But inside it, something still glowed faintly. A single recording crystal, shimmering with captured light. Olivia lifted it carefully. Inside the translucent shard, an image flickered. Elias Turner standing beside his invention, smiling. His lips moved. "Now you remember me." And then he was gone. Days later, Olivia uploaded the file, a digital restoration of the moment they witnessed. The video was titled, "The Hidden Room Beneath the Mansion, The Forgotten Genius of Elias Turner." It spread like wildfire. News outlets picked it up. Historians verified the blueprints, proving Elias Turner's invention predated similar patents by a decade. The truth could no longer be buried. Across the world, people began to speak his name. At the Smithsonian, a curator stood beside Olivia as they unveiled a new plaque beneath Elias Turner's restored machine. It read, "Inventor, Dreamer, Memory Keeper. Light remembers those who were never allowed to shine." Olivia placed the glowing crystal inside the machine, and for one brief, beautiful moment it hummed again. The same soft music filled the air, gentle, alive, eternal. She whispered, "He's home." That night, as she left the museum, Olivia passed by the reflection of the resonance engine through the glass. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw Elias standing there, smiling faintly, hand resting on the machine as if guarding it. And then he was gone. The hum lingered, though. A soft, endless sound that followed her into the night. Proof that memory, once awakened, never truly dies. History tries to silence those it fears, but truth hums in the dark, waiting to be heard. What's buried in injustice always finds its way back to the light. The night had grown thick with an eerie silence. Outside, the wind whipped through the old oak trees surrounding the mansion, their shadows crawling like ancient hands across the cracked walls. Inside, Maya stood frozen in the dim basement, her flashlight trembling in her grasp as she faced the heavy wooden door that had been hidden for over a century. Her husband, Ethan, stood beside her, pale but determined. They'd already removed the rusted hinges and scraped away layers of dust, but something, some invisible force, made it hard to move forward. "This doesn't feel like just a room," Maya whispered, her voice breaking the silence. "It feels like someone's waiting." Ethan glanced at her, his jaw tense. "Then let's find out who." With one last push, the old door groaned open. A wave of cold air rushed past them, carrying the faint scent of iron, wood oil, and something floral. Magnolia, maybe, long since faded. Maya stepped in first, sweeping her flashlight across the space. Her breath caught in her throat. The room looked like a frozen moment in time. Tools lined the walls, tables covered in half-finished mechanical sketches and copper parts. There were models of strange machines, gears, levers, blueprints labeled solar engine prototype, 1894. And at the center of it all sat a violin, covered in dust yet somehow glinting faintly in the light. This is incredible," Ethan murmured, setting down his flashlight to look at one of the papers. "These are engineering designs. Look at this. A combustion engine years before the patent was even filed." Maya's eyes filled with tears. And all of it was buried down here. Hidden. As she stepped closer, she noticed a photograph pinned to the wall, a sepia image of a man standing proudly beside his inventions. His dark skin gleamed under the light, and his expression was solemn, proud, but weary. At the bottom, in careful handwriting, it read, "Elias Carter, 1896, property of the Langfords." The name struck her. Langford. The very name of the family that had once owned this plantation. Ethan exhaled slowly. So he worked for them, and they took everything. Maya touched the photograph's edge, her fingertips trembling. He wasn't just working for them. He was creating for them. And they buried him, his work, His name, his life. Then the lights flickered. Ethan froze. Did you see that? The air seemed to thicken. The temperature dropped, and a faint hum echoed through the room, the violin string vibrating softly, though no one touched it. The sound was low at first, a single trembling note. But then, like a breath drawn in, it began to play. A slow, sorrowful melody filled the space. Notes that seemed too deliberate, too alive to be a trick of the wind. Maya's eyes widened. Ethan, the violin. He took a step back. That's not possible. The melody deepened, wrapping the air with aching emotion. The kind of grief that could only come from someone long wronged, someone waiting to be seen. Maya felt her knees weaken. He's here! In that instant, the air shimmered. The faint outline of a man began to appear near the center table. Translucent but unmistakable. A tall black man with steady, kind eyes and oil-stained hands. Elias Carter. The ghost turned toward them, his expression calm but filled with centuries of pain. When he spoke, his voice echoed like it came from both the air and the walls themselves. They took my name, my hands, and my future. But the truth remains. Maya swallowed hard, tears slipping down her face. We found your work. We'll tell the world what you did. The ghost tilted his head slightly. They locked it away so no one would remember. But memory is stronger than brick or steel. He raised a ghostly hand and pointed toward the violin. Play it, Ethan shook his head. It's too fragile. But the violin lifted itself, strings trembling, bow hovering mid-air. Slowly, it turned toward Maya. Play it, the voice whispered again. Maya stepped forward, her hands trembling. She lifted the bow, the weight of history pressing down on her. The moment the bow touched the strings, the melody changed. The song became a hymn of hope, sorrow melting into power. The ghost of Elias stood straighter, his outline growing clearer with every note. Around the room, the blueprints began to glow faintly, one by one, each design illuminating with a golden hue. Ethan watched in awe. It's like he's reclaiming his name. The final note hung in the air, vibrating long after her bow stopped. Then silence. The ghost turned toward them once more. You cannot change what was done, but you can change what will be remembered. He extended his hand, and from it, a small key appeared, floating gently before falling into Maya's palm. It opens the second chest, he said softly, beneath the floorboards. Then, as the first light of dawn seeped through the cracks of the basement window, his figure dissolved into shimmering dust, fading, but not gone. Maya stood frozen, clutching the key, the echo of his words ringing in her mind. Ethan knelt and began pulling at the floorboards where the ghost had pointed. Beneath them was a small iron chest, rusted but intact. Inside, dozens of sealed documents, patent certificates, letters and sketches, all signed Elias Carter. Maya gasped. These are the originals, proof of everything he invented. Ethan ran his hand through his hair. This could rewrite history. As the morning light filled the hidden room, Maya looked up at the photograph on the wall again. The one that once labeled Elias as property. No, she whispered. You were never their property. You were a genius, they feared. And as she said it, the faint echo of violin strings hummed once again, soft, approving, eternal. Hours later, reporters stood on the mansion's lawn. The story had already spread. Hidden room reveals lost legacy of forgotten black inventor. Historians arrived. Engineers analyzed the blueprints, and for the first time, the name Elias Carter was being spoken with reverence and pride. As Maya watched the world finally give Elias his due, she felt the weight of something greater than discovery. Justice. And that night, when the house was quiet once more, she returned to the basement. The violin sat on the table, untouched. Yet when she whispered, "Thank you," it gave one single soft note, like a sigh of peace. Maya smiled through her tears. Rest now, Elias. The world knows your name. Outside, the wind carried that note into the night, not as a haunting, but as freedom's song finally sung, The world above had changed. Yet the mansion still stood silent, as though holding its breath after a century of secrets. In the days following the discovery, Maya and Ethan found themselves at the heart of a story that captured the nation. A story about stolen genius, forgotten history, and a spirit that refused to die. The morning after the find, news crews lined the gravel driveway. The estate, once known for its dark past, now shimmered under the spotlight of truth. Reporters carried microphones, historians clutched their notebooks, and photographers snapped pictures of the artifacts spread out on long tables beneath a white canopy. Maya stood quietly to the side, her eyes fixed on the violin resting in a glass case, the same violin that had played by itself that night, now a symbol of everything Elias Carter had endured and created. Ethan came up behind her, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "They're calling it one of the greatest rediscoveries in American history," he whispered. "They're going to open a museum wing in his name." Maya nodded, though her voice trembled. He waited all this time, just to be seen. She turned toward the crowd where Dr. Leona Hayes, a respected historian of black inventors, was preparing to speak. Elias Carter, Dr. Hayes began, her voice firm yet reverent, was not just a man of invention, he was a man of vision. His ideas for renewable energy, advanced mechanics, and sound amplification predated many known patents by decades, but his genius was stolen, hidden, and erased from history. Until today. The crowd fell into respectful silence. What Maya and Ethan discovered in that hidden room, she continued, was not just a workshop, but a testament, a living memory of what resilience, creativity, and human spirit can accomplish, even when the world tries to silence it. Maya's eyes filled with tears as she looked down. She wasn't just emotional for Elias, but for every name buried beneath dust and denial. After the press conference, people approached her with questions. But she didn't care about fame or credit. She only cared that Elias was finally free. That night, when the guests had left and the last cameras had been packed away, Maya went back down into the basement. The air was still, but not cold. She carried a candle, not a flashlight this time, a quiet offering of light to the past. The tools, papers, and violin were now preserved behind protective glass, awaiting transportation to the museum. But the feeling, that faint hum in the air, was still there. "Elias," she whispered softly, her voice echoing faintly. "You did it. They finally know." For a moment the candle flickered, then steadied, as if in response. She smiled. "You can rest now, but I think you never really wanted rest. You wanted your story to keep moving." Her words echoed into the silence, and then, faintly, just for a heartbeat, she heard a note, one soft violin string vibrating from the case, not sorrowful this time, peaceful. Weeks turned into months. The mansion was restored, not as a home, but as the Carter Innovation Museum, dedicated to celebrating black inventors whose contributions had been overlooked. School children came in groups, their laughter echoing down the same halls that had once been filled with whispers and fear. At the grand opening, Maya stood before a bronze statue unveiled in the garden, Elias Carter, standing tall with a violin in one hand and a wrench in the other. His gaze looked upward, toward the horizon. Ethan placed his hand on her back. "He'd be proud," Maya smiled softly. "He already is." She gave a short speech, her voice carrying over the crowd. "When we bought this house," she began, "we thought we were buying history. But what we really found was truth. Elias Carter's story is not just his alone. It's a reminder that brilliance has never belonged to one race, one family, or one nation. It belongs to the hearts that keep dreaming, even when no one listens." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the crowd. Children, elders, scholars, artists. "And if you ever find a door sealed shut," she said, "open it, because sometimes what waits behind it isn't darkness. It's the light someone else was forced to hide." The audience erupted into applause. Cameras flashed. The bronze statue gleamed golden under the setting sun. Later that evening, when the museum was empty, Maya sat in the hidden workshop alone. A small plaque now hung above the doorway. Elias Carter's Workshop, rediscovered 2025. A legacy reclaimed. She ran her hand across the old wooden table, now polished and preserved. Her eyes landed on one of the inventions, a small mechanical bird that had never been completed. She picked it up carefully, adjusting one of the tiny gears. Then, as if guided by instinct, she found the missing piece, a gear that had fallen years ago, tucked beneath the floorboards. She inserted it into place. The bird twitched. A faint clicking sound filled the room, followed by a delicate whir. Then impossibly, the bird lifted its small metal wings and gave a single trembling chirp. Maya laughed through her tears. Still working after all this time, huh? In that moment, she felt him there, not as a ghost bound to sorrow, but as a presence of joy, pride, and peace. The candle beside her flickered once more. The violin gave a faint hum, and the air filled with warmth. Months later, Time magazine featured a cover story titled, "The Man Who Invented What America Forgot, The Resurrection of Elias Carter." It detailed the inventions that had been stolen, the patents that now bore his rightful name, and the scholarship fund established in his honor, supporting young black inventors in science and engineering. Maya watched as one of the scholarship recipients, a bright teenage girl, stood on the museum stage and said proudly, "Mr. Carter walked so that we could fly." And when she said it, Maya could swear she heard a faint violin note ring out from somewhere deep in the walls. That same soft, approving hum, moral, message. History is not just what's written, it's what's remembered. When truth is buried, it waits, it hums. It calls for justice through time, through generations, through voices that refuse to be silent. Elias Carter's story teaches that talent has no color, but injustice does. Yet even the heaviest doors, no matter how long they've been sealed, can be opened by truth, courage, and compassion. And sometimes the past doesn't haunt us. It guides us. The night was quiet again. No cameras, no reporters, no historians. Only the creak of the mansion breathing in the dark. Maya walked alone through the grand hallway, her footsteps echoing softly against the marble floor. The portraits on the walls, once cold reminders of the house's cruel owners, now seemed to watch her with something almost like gratitude. Down in the basement, the sealed door that once hid Elias Carter's workshop now stood open, preserved behind a glass frame. Visitors could peer through, but tonight Maya entered alone. She carried with her one thing, the violin. Not the replica now displayed in the museum upstairs, but the original instrument, lovingly restored. She had promised to play it one last time before sending it away. Lighting a single candle, she stood before the old workbench, her heart heavy but full. "Elias," she whispered, "this is for you." When she drew the bow across the strings, the sound that filled the room was unlike anything she'd ever heard. Low, trembling, ancient. It carried weight, sorrow, and triumph all at once, and as she played, the candlelight shimmered against the walls, illuminating sketches and blueprints as though brought to life. The air thickened, humming again with that soft, unseen energy she had felt from the beginning. For a moment, she saw him, not as a ghost, but as a memory shaped from light. A tall black man standing in his workshop, hands steady, eyes bright. He smiled at her, not with sadness but peace. Behind him, shadows of other faces appeared, men, women, children, all those whose brilliance and stories had been buried, now rising with him. The music swelled. Tears blurred Maya's vision, but she kept playing until the final note faded into silence. The light dimmed. The image dissolved, and when the last string stilled, she heard a whisper carried through the air, soft, clear, and kind. "Thank you for remembering me." Maya fell to her knees, clutching the violin. She smiled through her tears. "You were never forgotten," she said. "Just waiting to be found." The candle flickered one last time and went out on its own. Epilogue. 1 year later, the Carter Innovation Museum became a sanctuary for inspiration. Children came from all over the country, especially from schools that once couldn't afford science programs. Scholarships bore Elias Carter's name, and in one corner of the museum, at the entrance to the preserved basement, a quote was engraved on the wall. "Genius needs no permission to exist. It only needs to be remembered." Elias Carter, 1891–1912. Every year, on the anniversary of the discovery, Maya returned to the mansion after hours. She would sit alone by the glass wall and place a small candle on the floor. Sometimes, as the flame flickered, she would swear she heard faint violin notes drifting through the air, distant, peaceful, proud, not haunting, not sorrowful, but eternal. Because Elias Carter's story, the story of a black man whose brilliance had been stolen and sealed away, no longer belonged to the dark. It belonged to the world now, to every dreamer told to stay silent, to every inventor erased and every voice buried, and to one woman who dared to open the door. History doesn't disappear. It hides in silence, waiting for courage to uncover it. When truth is reclaimed, even the dead find peace, and the living purpose.